Good. All right. So, so there's lots of theories. Is the idea here? Lots of models to choose from. There's a lots of ways to explain the data, that explain our observations and that sort of thing. And that's the point that he's making here. And so the observations are underdetermined, right? They underdetermine the theories. There's lots of ways to explain it. So, one theory is one could say, you have multiple theories based on various observations, and it's pretty difficult to choose. All right, so now what he wants to do is to go back to this this idea of inference to the best explanation. He says, when constructing a theory, we have to sift through all the possible explanations, right? Because there's a bunch of them, right? Looking for the best one. Mm-hmm. That's what we want, the best explanation.
Again, going back to you're staying in his office wet. How many ways can you get wet? You could have stepped into a shower. You could have been rained on. Space aliens. You could have walked through the field with the sprinklers. You could have had the prankster pour something on you. You could have tripped and fallen in the janitor's mop bucket. Yeah. I mean, there's a water main break. All those factors come into effect where you're trying to figure out what the best explanation
of the observation that you're making, right? And so we want, and this is called what he calls, and what is generally called, inference to the best explanation, right? Although it's not clear exactly what kind of inference it is, technically speaking, he says. So in any case, inference to the best explanation, though, isn't unique to science, right? And he gives us now several examples and illustration of inference to the best explanation. The first one is Sherlock Holmes. Right? Sherlock Holmes does it every time he solves a case. He gathers facts during his investigation and then arrives at the best explanation of those facts. Hypothesis, he says, that answers why are things this way. That's the explanation. That's the hypothesis. The answer being, because Moriarty is the killer. Right. That's the best explanation.
Or let's take this out fiction. Any trial that you come in contact with is not based on facts as brute facts, but are inferences from those facts. Right. And it's people trying to prove why is the body on the ground? Because the husband's the killer. Yeah. Right. Yes, of course. And again, it's always the husband.
Good. Yeah. So it's interesting he uses Sherlock Holmes here. Usually, when you read Arthur Conan Doyle on Sherlock Holmes, he, I think, describes what's going on. He calls Sherlock Holmes doing deduction. Yeah. And really this is induction, kind of, right? Sherlock Holmes isn't making necessarily a deductive case. He's inferring inductively, probably, right? He doesn't say necessarily Moriarty is the killer, but probably. So that's an inductive move. But anyway, that's we don't want to get more technical.
Yeah, when he meets Watson, he says, "Oh, you're right-handed because you wear your watch on, your left wrist." Right. But maybe that's just a preference that Watson does, or because of his time in the war, he needs it on that wrist in order to do
his
pulse.
Gun right, or whatever. Right. Yeah. So it's a probability statement, not a necessity statement.
But he's Sherlock Holmes, and he's got a hidden author in his back pocket, so he's always right.
So that's Sherlock Holmes. Here's another one. A more mundane but oh so much important example is when your doctor tells you that you have a staph infection, right? She sees the redness and swelling, feels that the skin's temperature is higher than normal. Here's your complaint about fatigue, etc. Now notice she never observes that you have a staph infection. These same symptoms, could be cantankerous lupus, right? But she thinks that staph, is a better explanation given everything that she knows, right?
Because you can actually treat staph, so it's better to assume that than lupus.
Right. So based on the doctor's observation, the best explanation is a staph infection.
Because staph infections are more prevalent to occur. There are maybe other signs that lupus brings about that you don't have, and so when you're pointing your arrow at the target, you have to know at least to point it at a target. So you're not going to take these things and say there's a whale on your foot.
Right.
Possible explanation
Yeah.
of something, but
Yeah.
staph infection for the doctor is probably where it's coming.
The last one that he uses, and I'm picking these out because he's going to refer to them later. He says, one last example. You are an astronomer in the early 1800s and notice that the planet Uranus is now following the path, not following the path predicted by the current astronomical theory. Right? You made the calculations yourself. The planet's orbit is ever so slightly off where it should be. There are various possible explanations. You realize perhaps you calculated the orbit incorrectly or made careless observations, or perhaps current theory about planetary orbit is just plain wrong. But after much toil and trouble, you arrive at another hypothesis or theory. Perhaps there's an unseen planet affecting Uranus's orbit, right? And after painstaking research, you find that there is indeed another planet exactly where you calculated it should be. You call it Neptune, and check. Discovered new planet off your bucket list, right? And so notice here is a situation where the theory that you had seems to be wrong, and he's going to make this point later, right? But you don't give up the theory. You do further research, and you find out that indeed the planet isn't doing exactly what it's supposed to do. There's another planet affecting the
Right.
orbit of that planet.
Right. And going back to what he first said, when you have science and you have the beginning of science, we didn't have this knowledge, and boom, all of a sudden we have technological advances, or, hey, look, we proved that there's another planet in our universe until scientists get together and call Neptune not a planet next.
Yeah, like they did with Pluto.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have this big, giant discovery, and so science gets to kind of whitewash all the critiquing of and struggle that you did to arrive at that. Because, yes, you could have picked, my measurements were off. The way that planets travel must be the issue at stake.
Yeah, that is Newton's theory is wrong.
The angels are pulling this planet back just a little bit in order to convey some message to someone that's not me.
Right.
That's a possible explanation.
Right.
Oh, nope, I've come up with this theory. I've done some calculations. They seem naturalistic to people, and boom, I found Neptune. And so you can't argue with results. Look, I did science. No, you had a theory that worked out.
Right.
And so when we go back to photoshopped science, that's what it is this guy in a lab coat makes this prediction, and of course it's got to be another planet. We have to know this. Well,
Right.
no, it didn't have to be that.
Right.
But it just happened to be that. And so you get to kind of claim the snapshots of the
look
beginning
what science has
and the
done
end.
for us.
Mhm.
Yeah, look at how this happened,
Yeah.
and look how easy it
Yeah.
seemed. And this point here is it ain't that easy.
Right. Science is really hard.
Yeah. Good.